I've threatened to do this a couple of times, and a couple of people are interested, so what the hell? And apologies in advance for the likely title of this, but I can't help it. The pun, especially given, is just too delicious. So, I've gone over, at times, hinted at, hey, I use different dice for different games, and I have, you know, I often showcase which dice I choose to use with a given game, and you've probably seen most of these at various times. But let me go over this a little bit from the dice point of view instead of simply from what you see when I'm playing games. So some of my favorite dice are these kind of smallish, rounded, cornered dice. And some of them get as big as this. I don't mind using those every now and then. These I started really picking up in Azure Wish games. They tended to come in them. And somehow they became aligned with pretty games that were kind of wargame-ish, maybe more than kind of wargame-ish. Ones with a sort of a modern look to them, yet a good deal of color and everything in the game itself. White ones even, which are probably my favorite. And one of the things that I use these a lot for is when I'm playing certain tactical games, Napoleonic, Civil War, whatever. I'll choose to use different dice colors for the different nations. And same thing with, well, I can't do this with Europa Universalis because that needs 10-sided dice, but that's a different issue. Also, in here I have these weird little guys, which came with, I think some Ben Madison game or another. Or maybe more than one, I don't know how many I have. I have a ton of different colors in here, though. You can kind of get a view of the spectrum. And these are sort of my prize, six-siders, as it were. More standard is this pile. Now, this I used to keep, so I pull my dice out of every game, damn near, although it's coming more and more to, well, I am never going to need this amount of dice. But at one point, Avalon Hill produced most of the dice that I was pulling out. And it was very helpful for games like Titan, where I needed to roll, maybe 30 dice at once, and I would put them in a pith helmet and throw them down that way. Just because it made sense, right? It's like, no, it doesn't really. Like, it would make a lot more sense if I rolled in sets of 10 or something that I could get in my hands. But the idea was I can get them all out there and then match them out how I like. Now, there's a number of different types of dice here. There's, these are what I call, although they've come from other games, my SFB dice. Black and white. I don't particularly use them any differently than I use, say, the reds. Again, lots of different colors that I've collected, blues, greens. It's useful to have different colors, though, because you can, say, roll dice that mean different things at the same time that way. And this was especially important with the CWB-based games, where under the old version, before, Line of Battle and whatnot, and before NBS went to version 3, Dean suggested, or somebody suggested, but they got into his rules, to take, you take 2 dice for the base attack dice, and let's see, I think 2 dice for a morale check that had to be different colors from each other and significantly different. So I would do something like this, So I would have the white dice as the main roll, and then I'd have like a tens digit and a ones digit, and then somewhere in here, a little die for straggling. You know, you could even throw in dice for a leader casualty, which happen, you know, which checks happen pretty often if you have enough colors going on. Likewise, for a game like Britannia or something, I could grab, you know, for the attacker, use white dice that I have more of because they're likely to have more dice in the attack, and then maybe throw a couple of red dice in for the defender, and that way I can roll the whole thing at once, which is really kind of important for solo play, not so much for opposed. They're also hiding in here, in addition to these. I'll go over something. Oh, these are hard to dig out. I'm gonna break my finger trying. I just know it. I have a little SPI dice. These seem to have made their way into here. Maybe there's more than one in here, but I don't know if there's more than just a couple. I think I have a little pill vial that's filled with them. And these would be excess over that. What do I use those for? Well, not much, to be honest, because they're just a little too small to handle nicely, and they're hard to find if they fall or whatever. However, in my Settlers of Enrico, which is basically a homemade version of Settlers of Catan, where all kinds of my humor is expressed in it, it's all hand drawn and everything. Not well. I don't draw well, but I tended to use those dice for that, because what I used instead of the hex tiles for Settlers of Catan was 18xx size hexes, and I ended up with enough of those that I could, or else maybe I just used them as a pattern and cut things in that size. But the whole game kind of fits in a nice little bag. It's great for bringing to a coffee shop or something, as opposed to most Settlers of Catan. I used to try to use the SPI dice with the SPI games, but I just wasn't happy. What really made me happy, for the most part, with most war games, SPI, Avalon Hill, whatever, of that era, was using the Avalon Hill dice. What I didn't like was the dice that came in victory games, and these also... these guys come in the gamers stuff as well. I don't mind the colored ones, but the white ones, there's something weird, and I don't know. They look like there's something wrong in their manufacturing just by the way that the dots are presented on them. So that's those. And let's go to a different world, which is my role-playing dice world. Now, obviously, you know, in role-playing games, you need a whole bunch of different polyhedral dice, whatever. Great. And yes, I have 30-siders. My game was based on 30-sided dice because I bought a few of them and was like, oh, well, I don't have anything that uses them, so I'll design my own role-playing game that uses 30-siders. But what I ended up using the most out of these, for various reasons, because I got away from D&D, which, you know, used all these different types of dice. Now, RuneQuest uses all kinds of different dice as well, and I think Pendragon does too. Obviously, Traveler and the GURPS use just 6-siders, which feels weird to me. I actually probably would go to these for those games. Just because of mindset on them, because they're pure 6-sided dice. Now, with D&D or role-playing games that use 6-sided dice, I never use my normal 6-siders. I only use the ones with digits written on them. Because again, my mind is just fixated on that kind of situation. That's kind of the important thing. It's kind of interesting. The first time that I got polyhedral dice was well before role-playing. It was a game called Reckon. I don't know if I could find it on BGG. It came with a 20-sided die, a 12-sided die, an 8-sided die, 3 6-sided dice. You rolled them all together, And the goal was using standard arithmetic operations on each of the other dice to come to the total on the 20-sided die. And it was a fun little, just math puzzle that you threw out anytime you wanted. And I don't remember if there was some kind of scoring on it. I don't think, I don't even know if we had the rules for it. So it may not have been the actual game. But anyway, within my role-playing world, most of the time I was playing Rollmaster, which uses percentile dice for everything. I don't like that because it means 2 dice for everything, so you can't roll multiple actions at once or whatever. And then after that, perhaps my next big craze was sort of the World of Darkness stuff, most specifically Vampire. I didn't run the other games, even though I had Werewolf and Mage and stuff. I didn't have everything initially. I've gotten more now. But that uses all 10-sided dice in sort of a in a Shadowrun sort of way. Not really. So Shadowrun uses 6-siders, and I don't know what I would use for Shadowrun. I've never run it. I bought a bunch of it recently, well, like in the last 10 years. And I've never done any role-playing in that time, so. But where you're trying to hit target numbers with the dice, sort of like in a buckets of dice system. But in the World of Darkness, you're using 10-sided dice, and they don't open end the way Shadowrun dice do, which is, that's a kind of funky thing. Anyway, when I got my first, I bought my little basic D&D set and this is first edition when it first came out, basically. It may not have been the first year it came out, but it was pretty damn close. When I bought that, it didn't come with dice. It came with some little chits you could cut out, and with send away to us and we'll send you dice. And somewhere or another I fucking have those. I don't know. I suspect they're in my, now my dad's basement. I used to call it my mom's basement. And now he moved in there and she died, so, in that order. But I tended to, they were really, the ones that TSR sent were really horrible dice. They were like this waxy substance, and they weren't fair at all, and they were just really awful. So I was happiest with my original dice. And then fairly quickly, once I really got into D&D and whatnot, I was buying dice every so often. Now, a lot of these are not ones that I bought. They're ones that, I don't know, maybe I inherited or something. I have no idea with some of them. And then this is the sort of the bucket of shame. Now, they're not all shameful. These guys are kind of rounded and look kind of nice, but they're not hefty enough. These kind of things feel like I'm going to play Monopoly. It's not as good. It's not like the sort of clear, visible dice that those have. But one of the biggest things are, even though I like both of these kind, translucent and a solid, and I have tons. I mean, I just have tons of shit in here, as always. But I rather like these. These are very close to my favorites, right? Except they're bigger. And what bigger means is that it's harder to control how many you're to keep them from falling all over the place. It's they're more likely to hit stuff on the board. They take up more space and everything. They just don't make me as happy. I understand why people like them. It's the boom, type of, you're really doing an impact die roll. But it doesn't do it for me. I'm much more into the little type of thing. I've got other shit in here. So these are like, fairly good quality plastic, 20-sider, 10-siders and whatnot. That just come from various things. A lot of my GMT 10-siders are in here. I'm curious if I find stuff if I dig down. So I've got like, this is a 20-sider that I don't really like the color of. It's not really, there's other ones in there that are just as bad. It's just kind of crazy how many dice a person comes up with. And, when they decide to start sucking them all into a place. This is mainly going to be 6s and 10s. There's other shit in here though, but for the most part, anything that was a non-10-sided polyhedral, I pretty much put in here because I just don't have that many of them. Unlike the 10-siders, which come with a lot of games now, a lot of board games, the other polyhedrals, someone kind of had to go out of their way and buy. Might not have been me, but someone had to. But anyway, that is how I die.